again. I wanted to get on and do another video. I'm glad these have been so helpful, and I'm more than happy to share the information with all of you to help you out during this unexpected time of like converting everything to online lessons, which I'm sure feels daunting. So happy to help. There was a question yesterday, or a concern about being able to use up the full 30-minute lesson time. And so I posted this morning, or I think it was this morning, that often you need more than, or it feels like you need more than 30 minutes, even if you don't get more than 30 minutes, because things move a little slower because you're teaching students, how to mark their music. And so sometimes things just take a little bit longer because there's a little bit more explaining, at least in the beginning. That improves over time, of course, because you both adjust and learn how to do things in new ways. But one thing, if you do feel like you can't fill up the time, my go-to is to practice together. Practicing together with students, of course, is something that we all strive to do, and I certainly thought I was doing that with in-person lessons, or meant to do that with in-person lessons, but I still think somehow, because I was right next to them, I don't know if I still kind of did too much for them, or I was pointing too much out for them, or maybe not giving time to allow them to think through it on their own as much as I do online. So I feel like with my online teaching, I'm teaching students to practice more and doing more of that, and they're having to think through things much more on their own, and they're marking their own music and deciding things, and so they've become much better practicers. So this is a great time for that. So I just wanted to show one or actually two quick little practice games that are my sort of my go-to online practice games. So first thing is just having students mark their music. If you can, have them mark things in color, because it's really easy to say, hey, let's practice the pink section, rather than, okay, I want you to go to measure 3 and find beat 4. I mean, all of those things get very wordy and they take more time. So if it takes time to tell them how to mark their music, but you can hold up the page and just let them mark that. And again, then they get to use colorful utensils, and they'll think that's cool. And I hope I'm not repeating myself. I let my students mark with colorful things in their method books that aren't erasable, as long as they're listening really closely, and they'll learn to listen really closely. They'll become really good listeners through this process. I'll let them mark in regular colored pencils, regular highlighters, as long as they know it's just the method book that they do this. Because these aren't usually things that they go back to and play from, rather than like a repertoire book. Or in the case of all of you, if they have some of your music that they're borrowing, you definitely don't want them writing in highlighters that aren't erasable, or probably anything really other than pencil. So just be sure to specify that. Anyhow, so guide them to mark these colorful sections, and even if it takes extra time, that will go a long way going forward. So say, okay, we're going to practice the pink section, and my first practice game that's really kind of a hit with the students is a Tic Tac Toe game. This was inspired by just something I randomly found at the Target dollar spot one day. We've all been there, right? You go in to get shampoo and you come out with this and 10 other things, right? And forget the shampoo. Anyway, so this is a fun game, because it's I call it like Beat the Teacher Tic Tac Toe. And you don't have to have one of these. You can draw a tic-tac-toe board on a dry erase. You could just draw it on paper, whatever you want. So that's not a big deal. And then just let the student decide whether they want to pick their X's or O's. If you're drawing it on paper in a dry erase, the more colorful you can make it, the better. But what I'll have the student do, so the goal is to try to play a section so many times in a row correct. So I should probably take these off. So we'll start with a blank board. And students, of course, think they're being really sneaky, right? Because they know the tic-tac-toe strategy, and for some reason they think that you probably don't know it. I always let them go first. So if they play a section correctly, they get to pick where they want to put their first piece. So if my student was O, they usually always pick the middle spot. They're being very savvy. So then what happens is then I play, so they try to, I'm sorry, that's different. Another game. So I try to get them to do the section a second time correct in a row. And if they get it a second time correct in a row, then they get to pick their spot again. So they might pick this one. And then I try to get them to do it a third time in a row. Now, if the third time they make a mistake, and that happens, I don't want them to feel bad that they made a mistake, but what happens is then I get to pick a square. And so maybe I'll go right here. And they're like, oh! So then they, you know, they have to start building their tic-tac-toe again. So then they play it correct again. And I'm running out of my pieces. And then maybe they finally play it. I don't know where my other one went. They finally play it correct a third time in a row. And then of course they pick back, and I'm like, oh, you beat me. And then but they're very excited, you know. I'm like, oh, you beat the teacher. You beat the teacher. And they think that's really cool. So beat the teacher. Tic-tac-toe is a really cool game. And I guarantee you if they don't beat you, they'll want to play again. So it's a really fun, sneaky way to get in lots of repetition with a lot of laughter, a lot of giggles, a lot of fun. That's my favorite. Then another one you can do, now some of your students might have these Japanese erasers at home. You know, they're pretty popular. But I just have a board here. I sometimes do this at the piano as well and move erasers from one side of the piano to the other, but I thought since I'm here, so I have them pick, you know, 3 to 5 little erasers. And then the goal, of course, is to get them from one side to the other side. So you've probably done this with pennies. I just use the erasers because it's fun. I'm trying to think, if you have kids at home, I don't do this, but if you have kids at home, you know, if you have like little, I'm trying to think, the more you can draw their imagination into this process, the younger the student, the more they'll want to do this. So, you know, for me, I talk about these little guys going to a party, you know, so they'll play their first section, like the blue section, the pink section, and they get to move one over. I'm like, oh, the little horse gets to go join the party. He's having a party over here, and these guys want to get over there and you know, hook up with him. So then they do it another time, and this gets to go over to the party. So if you, I'm trying to think for some of you who might have kids, if you have, I don't know, like toys that might represent, like, I don't know, maybe there's a house or a barn or something, you could do different visuals and actually kind of draw them into a little bit of imagination and a little bit of a story as they move their erasers back and forth. I don't know if that made sense or not, but I'm thinking on the spot here. But I use these erasers a lot for piano practice. And then on the piano, I might move them, you know, if they all start, oh, you can't see that. Let me move my camera back. So you might be able to move them if they were all right here. They're very far away. But you can do that as well. And what's fun about that is the use of sound effects. So if a student plays a section and it's correct, you're like, pew, pew. So you, again, it's that being silly. So if you make sound effects and do different things like that, that's really fun for them. And they'll make sound effects from their end, even though they may not have the erasers. So they don't have to have those erasers. You can have them all in-house, and they, again, watch on the screen, and they'll be more engaged to watch on the screen if you have visuals floating around, because they'll want to see what's going on. So beat the teacher, tic-tac-toe, eraser practice with any other sort of props, imagination, storylines as you're moving those erasers back and forth, and sound effects. So there's today's installment. I hope this was helpful, and I'm sure I'll see you again. Good luck. Bye-bye.